The story of the song De Soto's Downfall starts with the Spanish colonization of the Americas. After Christopher Columbus accidentally found it by trying to find a new route to China and India, it opened the doors for the Spanish Empire to begin their expansion throughout the continent. One of the many conquistadors of this expansion was known as Hernando de Soto. He first made his efforts for the expansion by helping with the colonization of many places in Central America. Later, he began an expedition to southeastern North America, in which he set out with 10 ships and about 700 men. And throughout this whole journey, he would be famously known for being the one to discover the Mississippi River. Now that's pretty much what's been commonly stated in history. However, when told from the perspective of the indigenous people of the Americas, you will hear many things that are left out of the history books. There are stories of atrocities such as massacres, slavery, torture, and many other acts I don't think is suitable for me to say on YouTube. Now the purpose of De Soto's North American expedition was mainly for De Soto to enrich himself, which included stealing resources that the indigenous people had. This expedition was no different in terms of the treatment of the indigenous people. De Soto used the armor he and his men wore to try to trick natives by claiming he was an immortal sun god to gain complacency more easily. During all this, witnessing natives of these atrocities would go and warn the other tribes through what was known as the Indian grapevine, which is a whole system to connect many native communities for many things, such as trading. They would tell of De Soto's violence and extreme demands made against tribes he encountered, which let other tribes know that De Soto and his forces were a threat. One of the tribes at this time is now known today as the Chickasaw Nation. Around this time, their territory was across what is now known as Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi. The Chickasaws, after hearing this information, knew that eventually De Soto was going to arrive in their territory. And they were right. December 14, 1540 marked the first time the Chickasaws encountered Europeans. De Soto approached the Tombigbee River, and he knew that on the other side of the river were the Chickasaw. De Soto sent 2 of his men across the river to try to get them to talk to the Chickasaw. The Chickasaw killed those 2 men and sent their boat across the river back to De Soto as a way of telling him that they want nothing to do with him. De Soto persisted and created barges and got his men on those barges to travel across the river. The Chickasaw fired arrows at them in hopes of scaring them off, but De Soto persisted and he continued to cross the river. The Chickasaw then retreated back to their village to deal with what came next. Now when this happened, winter had already set, and De Soto demanded the tribe that he and his men needed food. The Chickasaw understood and decided to completely vacate one of their villages for the group, along with leaving them food at the village. This was done as a way of saying to De Soto to leave them alone. De Soto and his group took refuge at this village and stayed for 3 months, until spring arrived in 1541. It was then that De Soto was to continue his expedition, but first he approached the Minco, the leader of the tribe, to make outrageous demands, as he had done with previous tribes. He ordered for 200 Chickasaw men to help with carrying supplies and build camps for him and his men, and he also demanded many young Chickasaw women to serve him and his soldiers. The Chickasaws, of course, were not willing to meet these demands, but knowing that in the past, De Soto would become violent against tribes if they didn't cooperate, the Chickasaws were faced with a heavy decision. The Minco told De Soto to give him time to discuss with the tribal council before answering. De Soto allowed more time, and what the Chickasaws did instead was plan an attack. Since this was the first time Chickasaws encountered any Europeans, De Soto's group had more advanced weaponry such as guns, armor, and horses, and this made De Soto pretty confident that no matter what happened, he wouldn't lose to any indigenous tribe. The Chickasaw, however, had their own battle strategies that they used against De Soto's men before the real fight began. Chickasaw people would approach outside De Soto's camp at night and howl or sing to frighten them. They would do this night after night to the point where De Soto's men would be tired from the many Chickasaw visits. They also used this time to observe and learn how the Spanish guarded the camp and when they slept to to prepare for the time they would launch an attack on the Spaniards. Early in the morning of March 4th, 1541, more than 300 Chickasaw warriors approached the camp carrying small clay pots of burning herbs. They would use this to light arrows wrapped in herbs to set De Soto's camp on fire. The Spaniards were shocked and unprepared as they ran out of the burning buildings unarmed and some undressed. The warriors then attacked many of the men who ran out of the buildings, chasing De Soto and the rest of his group away from the camp. The Spaniards lost many supplies, including horses, weapons, food, and livestock. Once the battle was over, it was questioned why the Chickasaws didn't completely kill the whole group of Spaniards. This was a custom amongst the southeastern tribes to draw a devastating quick blow while losing few to no men. From this event, only one Chickasaw warrior died, while De Soto and his remaining group were left heavily wounded from it. On May 8, 1541, he would find the Mississippi River after leaving Chickasaw territory, and then a year later from this attack, De Soto died from illness, and to hide his body from the natives to keep the idea that he was a god, his men sank his body in the Mississippi River. After that, the remaining men would do more exploration before traveling down the Mississippi River to go back to Central America. Now that is a detailed summary of the whole event. I would highly recommend, if you want to learn more, to watch this documentary made by Chickasaw Productions called First Encounter, which talks about this event in greater detail. Thank you for watching. Of course, this is the first time that I've ever done this, so there might be some things that may need improvement for future episodes. But if you enjoyed it, click that like button, and if you want to stay tuned for future episodes of Okchja stories or more songs, subscribe to this channel. Once again, thank you for watching.